I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world, as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Greetings and salutations, Redeemers, and welcome to today's edition of Recipe Redemption. From 1966 comes this delightful recipe from the Del Monte Food Company, the corn tamale loaf. Now, this seems pretty straightforward. You just saute some onions, and then you add some chicken, some cornmeal, some chicken stock, and some seasonings and an egg, I think, and put it into a ramekin with a little bit of water around on a tray around it, and bake it for an hour. It's pretty simple, so let's get to it. As I said, this is going to be fairly simple. Just sweating off some onion and garlic just until they become translucent. As a reminder, I'm doing a 1/3 recipe just because I don't want a huge loaf of this. Once the onion and garlic become translucent, I'm adding a half a cup of chopped chicken, half a cup of yellow ground cornmeal, some chili powder, salt, and black pepper, using about a third of a can of tomato sauce, about a cup and a half of chicken stock, and stir to combine. Oh yes, and an egg. Just stir to combine until it's well combined. I've turned the heat off at this point, by the way. And then pour into a ramekin. Set that in a tray with some hot water and set into a 350 degree oven for about 45 minutes. Et voilà, a loaf. So I did not bother to use the optional garnish of green onions and sliced olives because I didn't want to. Pouring the hot creamed corn over the top doesn't really improve the appearance of this. It is, yeah, it is kind of a vomitous mass, and I just broke it up. Okay, so let's take a bite of this. Got a little bit of the cream corn in there. It's corny. A little bit of that chicken flavor comes through. The corn is very predominant. I see where they're going with it. The flavor, because it is so corny, with the cornmeal and the creamed corn on top of it, that you're getting that predominantly corn grain flavor, like you would in a tamale. It's quite moist. So it does have that going in its favor. I have to admit, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of tamales. I find them to be just kind of plain, because you just get a little schmear. You get a schmear of the masa, and you put a little bit of chicken in the middle. They tend not to be, at least the ones that I've had, not overly spiced or seasoned, so they tend to be a little bit bland. And so is this. It is honestly much like a tamale. It's not bad at all. The appearance is disquieting, but it's not bad at all. there is something to be said for the... I swear I heard somebody knocking. Anyway, there is something to be said for the simplicity of this recipe. You don't have to spend, an hour assembling tamales. Cook time's about the same. It's using a lot of pantry ingredients with your corn meal instead of, making your own masa from scratch. And the canned cream corn, the canned tomato sauce. You could conceivably use prepackaged chicken broth. For that matter, you could use canned chicken. So technically speaking, you could make this out of pantry ingredients. So there is convenience and simplicity. And you just, aside from sauteing the onions, it's just throw it all into a bowl, pour it into an oven-safe dish, and let her go. It's not very exciting. I don't know that this recipe actually needs redeeming. It's okay. It's actually not bad. It does need garnish. I've realized now, because just the cream corn, again, disturbs my calm. And like I said, it is actually easier to make this and just serve up slices of it than it is to make a whole bunch of tamales. And you don't have a whole bunch of corn husks to dispose of afterwards. But if we wanted to do something in this direction, a baked corn-based dish that's self-contained, that's somewhat kind of like a tamale, but different, just different enough that it kind of adds a little variety, I guess. Instead of baking it into a loaf, we could actually create a corn-based pastry, like a pot pie. Okay, we're going to start off by sauteing some onions and a little bit of olive oil. Just make sure that coats really well. So saute my onions for about a minute, give them a head start, and then add the garlic. You always want to add garlic to something rather than just start off sauteing it, because it can overcook really quickly. Once that's been going for about a minute, add my red bell peppers chopped. And once that's heated through, add my cooked diced chicken. This is a combination of white and dark meat. I like both. And just heat this through. It doesn't need to cook the chicken anymore. So just bring it up to temperature and then set it aside. In the meantime, I'm going to make our gravy. This is a roux-based gravy. So start off with some melted butter, and once that stops foaming and starts to kind of develop a nutty aroma, that's when I add an equivalent amount of flour. Stir that through, make sure the paste is even and no lumps in there. Once it starts to turn kind of a caramely color, that's a nice light roux. I'm adding the spices fairly quickly: chili powder, garlic powder, onion powder, cayenne pepper, kosher salt, and black pepper as well, and also cumin. I didn't really measure them, but less than about a half a teaspoon of each. And then the chicken stock, probably about 3 cups worth of chicken stock that I had made the day before. The rest of the cream corn and the tomato sauce, just because, waste not, want not. But also, they will add a little bit of a flavor component, some sweetness, some vegetal flavor, a little bit more of the corny flavor to the gravy itself. And also a can of diced green chilies to kind of amp up the sort of peppery flavor without actually adding heat to this. And finally, about a cup and a half of half and half, because it's not gravy without dairy. So just mix this together and bring it back up to a simmer. Make sure that whatever thickening power your roux is going to contribute is, I guess, done contributing. At which point you get to add your chicken and vegetable mixture. It is also at this point that I realized that I was trying to scrape stuff out of a non-stick pan with a wire whisk. So yeah, need to switch to something slightly less aggressive. Yeah, that's better. I try to take care of my stuff. I really do. Just let that heat through, make sure it's stirred in well, and then set aside and allow it to cool to room temperature while you make your pie dough. Now my pie dough is going to be a little bit different. You see here I actually have 2 cups of cornmeal in addition to 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I've also, in addition to the stick of butter, I also have a block of cream cheese, which is going to add a certain tanginess and additional richness to it. Spicing wise, I have chili powder, kosher salt, garlic powder, onion powder. Now, I didn't want to dirty up my food processor making a pie dough, so I'm using the old-fashioned 2-knife technique, just cutting things up until I have basically like coarse breadcrumb texture. Adding about a 1/4 cup of water to this and mixing well until it forms a ball of dough, and refrigerating for a half an hour gives me something like this. Now this is about 1/3 of the ball of dough that I end up with. Has been refrigerated, which is why one of the reasons why it's so stiff here, because it's just, I'm actually rolling out cold butter and cream cheese. But roll the pie dough out until it's about 1/4 inch thick, or maybe a little bit less would be better. Not quite an 1/8, so that would be like 3/16. Anyway, once it's rolled out, I'm using this bowl because it will give me about a 6-inch circle, which I'm going to cut out here, assuming I get the bowl off, and throw into a pre-greased muffin tin, and just very gently sort of lift and drop with a little bit of pressure in the middle to make it conform to the muffin tin. And where it sort of crimples up because it's not quite cut to the shape that will perfectly fit a muffin tin, just sort of squish it against the sides. That'll be fine. If it's a little bit thicker in some places because of the folds, that's okay. I personally don't mind. If you have a problem with it, you might want to do a little bit more squishing. But in any case, take our cooled chicken gravy and vegetable mixture, fill it up, not quite to the top, 7/8 of the way. Just leave a little bit of space for smushing around, because the next thing you're going to do is take a 4-inch circle of the same pie dough that you cut out of the sections that the big bowl wouldn't fit, and lay that on top and crimp. And I'm just pressing it gently against the sides to sort of unify it with the bottom crust. And I'm not going to do any sort of fanciness with the edge of the crust. This is good enough. This is sort of a rustic rendition. Anyway, I'm going to take a fork and just poke a couple of vent holes in the top of my pot pie. Put it in the oven, 350, about an hour. Is it perfect? No. But you should know by now not to expect perfect from me. But it came out intact. It's a nice looking crust. A little thicker than a pie crust probably should be, but that's kind of how I roll. Let me just dig away some of this top crust so we can see down inside. That's not bad. See if you can see inside here. With the spicing, there's a lot more going on, which I like. The onion and pepper mixture is oddly actually the predominant flavor here, even though I have that chicken velouté slash gravy. Oh, there we go. It might be that the spicing isn't really homogeneous in the stew mix that I put into this, but yeah, the flavors need to be tinkered with. But this is a convenient, almost sort of hand pie. Maybe a little deep for that particular purpose. But crust is quite delicious. Oops, it's actually a little crumblier. It's starting to fall apart. Okay. So not a hand pie. But still quite tasty. I think if I tinkered with the ingredients and the proportions, I think this would come out better. The crust is buttery, as well as, you know, that sour cream gives it a little bit of a tanginess, and we did put some seasoning into the crust as well. The stew is warm and pretty hearty. I think I probably could have actually put more corn into the stew itself, but for the first iteration of this recipe, not bad at all. I'm actually quite happy with that. So what do you think? A chicken tamale pot pie, is that something you would like to try? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know if you have any other ideas for what I could have done with the corn tamale loaf. My first thought is chili sauce, just to kick it up a little bit, because it is kind of bland. But as always, all your comments are welcome, and I'll see you next time here on Recipe Redemption. Have a good one.